Hello all, this is class number 2. We are going to be making a circle skirt pattern. I hope everyone is doing well. I hope everyone is not too stir crazy and figuring out this whole online class business. I'm not sure I am. I think this is feeling like it is take number 24 for this video. Maybe not quite that bad, but maybe like 8. Last time I just had a phone call by accident and had to stop. So anyway, I hope everybody's doing okay. And I guess we will start doing the circle skirt pattern. How about that? Okay, so we're gonna get this closer so you can see a little bit better as to what I'm doing here. Okay, so this is the shape that we're going for right here. We're gonna start with your waist measurement. The waist measurement is right here. That's your waistline right there. This is the finished circle skirt length all the way around here. And what we're going to make is this distance right here. Okay, this semi-skirt shape is right here. That will be our pattern shape. Of course, a lot bigger. So when we're actually doing this to put the whole skirt together, we will be cutting a piece of fabric out that is shaped like this side of the semicircle, and then we are going to flip it and do an opposing side semicircle, so that then we will sew these two pieces together in the back, which is our center back here. We're going to leave the front open so that you can get in and out of the skirt, and we're going to put a waistband along our waistline here that'll tie. So that will be our skirt in a nutshell. But we've got to get to this pattern first, right? Okay, so to do that, we are going to start by using this formula that should sound kind of familiar to you. Okay, so we've got waist divided by pi equals the diameter. Is it coming in? Do you remember it at all, maybe? Okay, we divide that by 2, and it's the radius. So it's the radius that we need to know, because that is half of the diameter. So it's this distance here that we need to create this half semicircle. Okay, I'm going to use 31. So I'm going to take 31, I'm going to divide it by 3.14, and I am going to get my diameter. So that's the whole distance across here, which is 9.87, okay? So I've got my waist, 31, divided by 3.14, and I've got 9.87. It's all the way across. But I don't need the whole distance. I just need half of it. So I'll divide it by 2, which is my radius, and it is 4.9. Okay, 4.9. So that is pretty darn close to 5 even. 5 even would be a lot easier to measure out than 4.9, don't you think? So it's fine. We're going to measure at 5. We're going to pull it up a little bit, make it a little bit bigger. That's fine. And make it 5 inches. That's easy. So if any of your measurements your radiuses end up being close to an eighth, a quarter, a half, go ahead and just tick it up. That's fine. Make it a little bit bigger. It's fine. Say if it is 0.10, go ahead and make it 0.125. So make it an eighth. That's fine. Can you all see that well? If it is, say, 0.20, go ahead and make it, round it up and make it 0.25 and measure a quarter of an inch. If it's 0.45, go ahead and round it up to 0.5 and do a half an inch. That's fine. It doesn't have to be super specific, but I would round it up. Okay, all right, so to make the whole skirt the right size. All right, so I gave you all a sheet of white paper that had one complete line on it and a circle, a dot in the center. Okay, so we're going to go from that dot to measure our radius. So that's what this distance is right here. That distance right there. So let's make this a little bit closer now. So I'm going to just hang with my dot. Okay. All right, so I said my radius is going to be 5 inches. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go from my dot and I am going to measure 5 inches out. And basically just tick this off, measuring from my 5. I'm going to go tick, 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 all the way around at 5 inches. And keep going all the way around 5 inches, 5 inches. It's not completely accurate. 5 inches. Okay. So I've got my little tick lines. And now what I'm going to do is just meet them. Just draw a line to connect all of my little tick lines. So I have a semicircle, which measures 5 inches here all the way around 5 inches. Does that make sense? Okay, that's good. Then I need to measure the distance of my skirt. So I'm going to measure from my waistline down to the distance that I want my skirt to finish. So do try and go from your true waist down the side of your leg to wherever you want your skirt to finish. I'm going to go ahead and just take 15. That'll work. Sam, I gave you enough fabric that you could probably go from your mid-calf if you would like. Something around there. So I'm going to work with 15. So there's 15. So that is my measurement here. Now, that measurement I'm going to take from my waistline here to my finished length. So that is 15 there. So I'm going to tick that measurement off 15 all the way around here. So I got 15, I got 15, I got 15, 15. So I'm pretty much just measuring from my waistline down to make a new semicircle, a new larger semicircle, all the way, this isn't completely right, all the way around. Okay, and I'll do that all the way around, and then I'll come back and connect the dots, so to speak, all the way around. So I have 2 semicircles now. Okay, so that is my pattern shape. Now this shape has no seam allowances on it. This is my true finished shape of my skirt. To actually sew this shape together, I have to add extra fabric in areas that I'm going to stitch the parts together. So my extra fabric is my seam allowance. And for this shape right now, I have no seam allowance. So I have NSA. So that you will need to put on the skirt. No seam allowance. Doesn't matter where you put it, just somewhere on your skirt. So you know that this is the true shape of the finished skirt. It does not have seam allowance added. Okay? The next thing you need to add is your grain line. So the grain line is going to go parallel with your first extended straight line, the first line I gave you. So that will be a parallel line. Go ahead and give yourself a line with your ruler, an arrow at each end, and then you can write grain line along that line. Okay, so grain line. So what the heck is a grain line, and why do I have to put it on my pattern? Okay, now sorry, I'm gonna have to walk over here and get my fabric. So grain line refers to your fabric. Okay, when a piece of fabric is woven, it's on this big loom that extends, I mean, it was probably as wide as this whole room. You know how wide this room is. And it has, it's a huge machine that's runs, I mean, it's probably could be 20 feet long and 10 feet wide. And it runs fabric all the way down the distance, the length of that loom. So when it's making fabric, it has a width of fabric, something like this one here, where it has a bound edge on both sides, here and here, and the distance across that bound edge is a cross grain, and then the grain line is actually the whole length of the fabric, the distance that would be running up and down that loom. The diagonal of that fabric is the bias. So this bias is very stretchy. The cross grain of the fabric, across from side to side, is a little stretchy. It has a little bit of give to it. The grain line has very little stretch. It's very strong. Okay, now the other term you need to remember is the selvage. That's the bound edge here, and on the other side, that is the selvage. It's not a salvage. It's not. We're not going to a salvage yard and picking up some auto parts. It's a selvage. So we've got selvage, we've got grain line, we have cross grain, and we have bias. So those are the 4 terms you need to know for your fabric. Now when we actually get to cutting the fabric out, you'll basically be putting this pattern on top of the fabric so that, grain line here, so that, let's see, that way. So grain line here, so that the fabric would be sitting like this with your pattern. So the grain line's this way, just as your pattern is grain line. Now, granted, this pattern will be on top of your fabric, but it's a little hard for me to do that right now. And we cut this whole shape out. Okay, so that's the grain line. All right, you go away now. Okay, now the other things you need to denote on your pattern. We also need to let you know about the center back and center front. So we've put a CB here. We've got CB here denoting center back. So this part of the pattern, this line here is your center back line. This line here is your center front line. So that's CF. So this line here is your center front line. And of course, this is still your waistline. Okay, so that's the second thing you need to write on there. The last thing you need to denote is where your seam allowance is, because you'll need to remember that when you're cutting your pattern out. So we're going to add a 1/2 inch for our seam allowance. So if you would denote that on your center back line, so I've got plus a 1/2 inch seam allowance there, 1/2 inch here, and also plus a 1/2 inch seam allowance here. So you've got it in 2 places. This center front line and your hem line are actually going to end up being cut lines for your pattern, but we'll get into that more later. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense so far. So I think right now I'm going to, so that is your completed pattern. I think I'm going to go ahead and stop now, and I'm going to make another video of me doing it on the white paper. If anybody would like to see that specifically, I will do another one. But right now I'm going to go ahead and stop because I think you probably have gotten the idea. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to text me or email me or whatever. And I will probably talk with all of you very soon. All right. Thank you so much.